Hi there. My name is Gabe, your NurseAlly, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to share a new project or extension of the NurseAlly channel, a place dedicated to making health and wellness accessible for everyone. While NurseAlly focuses on providing insights to improve patient care and prevent readmissions, this new project called Healing Circle is a space specifically designed for emotional recovery and connection. Together, these platforms aim to create a supportive community for both healthcare providers and the people they care for. So thank you for joining me in this journey. It means the world to have you here. As a nurse, I've walked through moments that changed me forever, some beautiful, others incredibly heavy. If you've ever felt the weight of an unexpected outcome or carried the emotional toll of an emotionally challenging or traumatic event, you're not alone. Here at the Healing Circle, we're opening up the conversation about second victims, those healthcare workers who give so much to others but often find themselves grappling with guilt, doubt, and pain when things don't go as planned. This is a space where we'll share stories, reflect on lessons learned, and discover ways to heal together. Whether you're a nurse, a doctor, a first responder, an EVS worker, or a dietitian, or someone supporting a loved one in the healthcare field, this is a place for you. A place where vulnerability meets strength and healing begins. So take a deep breath, grab a moment of calm, and join me in the healing circle. Together, we'll build a community where every story matters and no one has to heal alone. Today, we're delving into a story that resonates deeply with so many of us in healthcare. It's about Sarah, a compassionate and dedicated nurse whose love for her profession was tested in unimaginable ways. Sarah's story begins like so many of ours, with a commitment to care for others. But what happens when the weight of that care becomes too much to bear? Her journey, overloaded with care, is a powerful reminder of the emotional toll healthcare providers face and the strength it takes to find healing. This is Sarah's story. It was a shift like any other, or at least that's how it started. The ER was chaotic, but it always is. I thrived on the energy, the fast pace, the sense that what we were doing mattered. That day, I had a full patient load that I thought was managing fine. Then it happened. The code blew. The patient was only 26, a car accident victim brought in minutes before. I remember rushing to the trauma room, my hands trembling slightly as I grabbed my gloves. There was so much blood. My team and I worked tirelessly, intubating and administering fluids, trying to stabilize him. For a moment, we thought we had him. His vitals improved, and there was a flicker of hope. But then, just as quickly, it all went downhill. The moment we called it, my heart shattered. He was someone's son, someone's friend, and now he was gone. And I couldn't stop asking myself, what did I miss? What could I have done differently? But there was no time to process. As I stepped out of the trauma room, I was immediately called back to another patient of mine, a 5-year-old child with a high fever and lethargy who had been stable when I'd last checked. Now their condition had deteriorated rapidly, and their heart rate was climbing, sepsis was setting in, and we were racing to get fluids, antibiotics, and central line started. In the middle of managing the child, I heard the unmistakable sound of shouting from the front lobby. I glanced up to see security wheeling in another trauma, a gunshot wound victim who had staggered into the hospital, bleeding heavily. I wanted to split myself in two. My mind was with a pediatric patient, but my heart was pulled toward the trauma in the lobby. My colleague stepped in to manage the gunshot victim, but I couldn't stop feeling like I wasn't doing enough, like I was failing everyone. I kept telling myself, just get through this shift. But every second felt heavier, every decision felt like it carried more weight than I could handle. By the time the gunshot victim was stabilized and the pediatric patient was transferred to the ICU, my body was running on autopilot. My heart, though, was shattered. After all these events, I had to step out. My manager told me to take a moment, but the ER doesn't stop for grief. I wiped my tears and went back to caring for my other patients, pretending I was okay. Almost through the end of my shift, Dr. Marshall was yelling at staff for chest tube equipment, shouting profanities, and calling my colleagues incompetent assistants. My blood was boiling at this point. I lost my cool and yelled back at him. We break our backs day in and day out with unappreciated patience, and on top of that, getting paid crap money so you uppity a-hole providers can treat us like we don't matter? Immediately, my manager intervened and told me to go outside and cool off. I stepped out of the hospital and immediately felt that fresh cold air hit the top of my forehead, only for a moment. A few minutes passed by, and I saw my manager approach me. She told me to go home. They pulled our resource into my assignment. She didn't even mention how I was doing after all these events, even though she knew I was going through something. I really felt like she didn't have my back out there with the providers. Maybe that's just how leadership is. They think they know what to say, but really they don't understand what we go through on a daily basis. All they do is manage. That night, I couldn't even drive home. I just sat in my car, replaying the events over and over, feeling like I'd failed. Not just one patient, but all of them. I felt paralyzed by guilt, replaying every second of that trauma over and over in my mind. What bothered me even more is that after all these 20 years of experience under my belt, I still felt like my new grad days, where I hardly knew anything about emergency medicine. When I finally got home, I barely spoke to my husband. He would keep on asking, "Are you sure you're okay?" I told him I was just tired, but the truth was, I didn't know how to explain the crushing weight I felt. How could I tell my husband, who is a garbage man, what I have gone through last night? He wouldn't understand. That night, I thought about quitting. I thought about how much easier it would be to walk away and go into another profession where I wouldn't see death and suffering every day. I was sitting in front of the computer looking up universities to apply to without knowing what I was applying for, but thinking in my head, I'd rather go back to school and go into business than to face another day like this one. But it wasn't the end of my story. The days that followed were no better. I started to dread going to work, afraid that another code would come and I'd fail again. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and no matter how much colleagues told me, "You did everything you could," I didn't believe them. One night after I came into my shift, with only 2 hours of sleep, mind you, and a week after the incident, I was placed as a resource. As I progressed through my shift, I was told there was a 3-year-old drowning victim in CPR status in the field arriving in a few minutes. That's when it hit me. It all came to my head. I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe, my chest was tight, my hands were shaking, and I thought, this is it. I'm having a heart attack. But it wasn't my heart. It was the crushing weight of carrying too much for too long. I went in the supply room at that moment, pretending to restock between patients. My body felt like it was betraying me, and I thought, if anyone finds me like this, they'll think I'm weak. They'll think I'm not cut out for this. I sat on the floor trying to calm my racing thoughts, but the tears came anyway. It was like a dam had finally broken, and all the emotions I'd been pushing down for weeks came rushing out. That's when my charge nurse, Emily, walked in. I tried to put myself together, wiping my face and pretending I was fine, but she saw through it immediately. She knelt down beside me and said, "You're not okay, and that's okay." At first, I didn't know how to respond, but the kindness in her voice, the way she didn't try to fix me or brush it off, made me break down all over again. For the first time, I admitted loud how scared, guilty, and overwhelmed I felt. Emily stayed with me, listening as I let it all out. She shared her own story, how years ago she'd felt the same way after losing a patient. She told me about the peer support program she joined and how it helped her find her way back. That conversation was the lifeline I didn't know I needed. It was the first step in a long journey of healing. The next day, I reached out to the peer support team at the hospital. Talking to people who truly understood what I was going through made all the difference. They didn't judge me or tell me to toughen up. They gave me space to feel, to grieve, and to start letting go of the guilt I'd been carrying. Slowly, I began to heal. I learned to recognize when I needed help and to reach out before I reached a breaking point. I started practicing mindfulness, setting boundaries, and finding small moments of joy in my work again. But the most important lesson I learned was that I wasn't alone. There are so many of us out there silently carrying the weight of our experiences, thinking we have to bear it on our own, but we don't. Now, I make it a point to check in with my colleagues, to be that listening ear that Emily was for me. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person to remind you that it's okay not to be okay and that healing is possible. All I can say is wow. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder of the importance of connection, compassion, and vulnerability in our healing journey. Her courage to seek help and her willingness to share her story with us today is a gift, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is hope. Her journey also reminds us that as caregivers, we're human too. And while we dedicate our lives to helping others, it's just as important to care for ourselves. If you've ever felt the way Sarah did, know that you're not alone. There are people who understand, who care, and who want to help. Healing starts with a single step, whether it's reaching out to a peer, talking to a counselor, or simply acknowledging your feelings. Thank you for joining NurseAlly at the Healing Circle today. Together, we can build a community where every story matters and every voice is heard. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you don't have to carry the weight alone. If you have comments, feel free to drop them below. I would love to hear your thoughts and share your stories. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss health and wellness insights. Join us next time for more Healing Circle stories.